talking about trading psychology today, psychology is really a funny thing because it's not one size fits all. It doesn't. All different types of psychology don't, and treatment, I guess, don't work for all kinds of people. Some people respond very well to a certain kind of treatment and don't respond at all to another, and someone else come in, it could respond quite differently. And so, in looking at this, we talk about neural-associative conditioning. The trading as mental warfare is kind of a different aspect where we actually use, our psychology or our mind, the study of the mind, to learn how to interpret information faster and make faster decisions. And so, basically, what I want to cover today is a little bit more on neural-associative conditioning. I want you guys to understand this because this is a powerful tool. Unlike neuro-linguistic programming, which is something a little bit different and something that requires really a third party to work with you on, the neuro-linguistics. Neural-associative conditioning is something that you can do on your own, and it's applicable not only in trading but in life skills as well. And so we're going to talk about neural-associative conditioning, what it is, and then we're going to talk about really the 6 steps to changing your neural associations and building basically a better you. And it sounds funny, but in reality, there is a great deal of good that can come out of this. I will tell you this, traders, when I went through these 6 steps, it really made a huge difference in my trading. Huge. When you follow these steps and you do it correctly and you begin to shift your neural associations of what brings you pain and what brings you pleasure, when you begin to break the bad habits, so to speak, you're going to see a lot of really good things that come out of that. But what is neural associative conditioning? Well, it's a science that's developed by Anthony Robbins. Many of you know Tony Robbins. Some of you may have whatever opinion you may have of him. Neural associative conditioning was developed by Tony Robbins. And it was based on the foundations of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, which developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder in their efforts to model communication strategies for effective therapists. Neuro-linguistic programming was really an attempt for psychologists and therapists to find the best ways to communicate with their clients, and from that sprung neuro-linguistic programming. And then Tony Robbins took this to the next stage and developed what he called neural-associative conditioning. The system was based on Korzybski's work of general semantics, stating that a person's experience is not reality but a representation of it. The map is not the territory, so to speak. And this is I see I misspelled territory. Fantastic. A person's experience is not reality, but is the perception of reality. A perception is reality, so to speak. And so the general thought process is that, people, and we've talked a little bit about this in behavioral finance and some of the other things that we've discussed in the past, but that people's perception is not always correct, but in their own minds, it is what it is. It is the reality in which they live. Neurolinguistic programming is also based on the primary psychology of language strategies utilized by Dr. Milton Erickson to shift the internal representations and therefore the experiences and the behaviors of patients. The science of neural associative conditioning is a system that describes the process of change in human beings and is based upon the premise that there are 2 determining reasons for human behavior. Number 1 is the need to avoid pain, or 2, the desire to gain pleasure. And in its purest form, if you think of neural associative conditioning, it is based on this concept that you only do things for one of 2 reasons. You either move to avoid some sort of pain, or you move to gain pleasure. And what we have found, and what psychologists and therapists have found throughout the course of the study and the application of this science, is that people will move faster and will move to avoid pain before they will move towards pleasure. And so we know that of those 2, the pain-pleasure model, the move to avoid pain is greater than the move to gain pleasure. In order for the brain to effectively evaluate how to rapidly accomplish these two tasks, you must create neuroassociations, associations within the nervous system that are used to instantly determine the meaning, pain, pleasure of situations, people, things, sounds, emotions, etc. These neural associations are the directing force of all human behavior. And again, this is a theory, the theory of neural associative conditioning, or the science of NAC. The easiest way for me to explain this is to imagine a hot stove. And imagine, putting your hand down on top of the hot stove and instantly feeling that pain that comes. I mean, those of you who can imagine right now, if you put your hand on that hot stove, what that would feel like. And there's a physical reaction that happens in your body when you think about that. Like nails across a chalkboard, it kind of gives you the shivers. That is a neural association to that action. So you realize that if I put my hand down on top of that hot stove, that it's going to burn me. And I'm going to associate a great deal of pain with that. And that pain is interpreted physically in my body. Same thing with, nails across a chalkboard. Even some of you right now, when I say nails across a chalkboard, you're shivering because you feel what that was like the last time you heard it. That is a neural association towards a specific action. Now, let me present to you a concept of the pain-pleasure model or modality here. Imagine that I offered you $10, 10 big smackaroos USD, to put your hand on a red-hot stove for 20 seconds. How many people for $10 would do that? Very, very few. The reason that so few people would not be involved in something like that is simply because the pain-pleasure modality. A person, right now, the need to avoid pain, the need to avoid putting your hand on that hot stove, exceeds your desire to gain pleasure, which is the money that would come from doing such a thing. Now, what if I offered you $100 to do it? Then what? Some of you may say yes. Probably most of the people in this room would say no. What about $1,000? $10,000? $100,000? What's your price point? At what point does the desire to gain pleasure overcome the need to avoid pain? Well, in truth, this never really happens. You never really overcome the need to avoid pain. What you do is you shift what you apply pain to. Instead of saying, I'm avoiding the pain of sticking my hand on a hot stove for 20 seconds, the $100,000 takes away the pain of a car payment, of school bills. You start thinking about all of the things that money will provide you, and all of the pain that you will be able to avoid by having that money. And pretty soon, the pain of putting your hand on that hot stove is less than the pain that you're now receiving in your life because of your lack of money. And again, this is something that everybody can kind of relate to, because everybody, at some point, pretty much everybody will give it a shot. $1 million, $10 million, somewhere along that line, you hit a wall where you say, yes, I will burn my hand for 20 seconds in order to receive X amount of dollars, which in turn will relieve X amount of pain in my life. And so when you think about neural associative conditioning, neural associations, you can understand not only what it's like to put those fingernails on the chalkboard or put your hand on that hot stove and the physical reaction that you get from even thinking about that, and also understand the two modalities here: need to avoid pain or gain pleasure. All therapies can work, but not all the time or with all patients. Neuroassociative conditioning addresses the question, what is it that all therapies have in common when they're successful in creating change in people? With neuroassociative conditioning, the therapist can rapidly create change in a human being so the person's neural associations consistently lead to pleasure and consistently avoid pain. NAC is also a science of successful conditioning, so that a person can be conditioned to feel and behave in ways that support their goals, create success, and lead them away from behaviors that create limitations or pain. And this is really interesting. This can be done. You can change what you choose brings you pain or pleasure. Some people think that this is ridiculous. I can't help what hurts my feelings. Well, in truth, you can. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can begin to build some positive neural associations so that you can lead and direct your life in a way, and your trading in a way that's going to, be most meaningful for you. A human being's destiny is based upon the neural associations of pain and pleasure that are linked to the nervous system to create situations, people, ideas, emotions, and contexts. By changing these neural associations, we change the way people evaluate the way they feel, and therefore the way people behave. NIC is especially helpful for athletes to become consistent in their mental game, as well as improving their actual physical ability to perform at their peak. Managing one's emotions in competitive sports can determine the success or failure of performance. Everybody knows the golfer who hits a couple of bad shots, and that starts to get in the back of his head. The baseball player who hasn't had a hit in 16 games gets into a slump, into a rut. Now he's thinking about it. Now he's thinking about every shot. He's thinking about every swing. And that thought process causes the athlete to go into an even greater slump than would have really been necessary. As martial artist Bruce Lee once put it, emotions are your enemy. When you get into emotion, you lose your mind. How applicable is this to trading? Just an absolutely fantastic parallel of what we deal with day in and day out. Emotions are your enemy. How many times have you been in the market and emotions have taken over your decision-making process? Caused you to think outside of what would be considered rational thought at any other time. How many of you have gotten done putting on a trade and then exiting a trade and then putting the trade back on, and then when it was finally over with, when you were finally done, and you sat back and you just said, what was I thinking? What on earth was I doing? This doesn't even make any sense. That is your emotions ruling your trading. Application. By learning to control our emotions, and what we choose brings us pain and pleasure, highlight on the choose, we can change how we look at the market. NAC teaches the athlete to mentally condition themselves so that they can manage their emotions and maintain focus and concentration to enter and stay in the zone. You can replace athlete with trader. Neural associative conditioning teaches the trader to mentally condition themselves so that they can manage their emotions to maintain focus and concentration to enter and stay in the zone. We talked about being in the zone, or in the market's OODA loop, in Trading as Mental Warfare. If you haven't had time to watch that video, I would highly suggest you do so. But this is, in a nutshell, what neural associative conditioning is. All right, so now practical application. The 6 steps to mastering your emotions. And basically, traders, what follows is a brief summation, and it is basically what the 6 steps of neuroassociative conditioning mastery as outlined by Anthony Robbins in his book Awakening the Giant Within. This is if you guys want to know more about this, if you really want to understand what neuroassociative conditioning is, then Tony's book is really a fantastic place for you to start. It is it's an exceptional book, in my opinion, as far as just dealing with a lot of the issues that we deal with as human beings. And of course, all of it is if you're reading through it in its application in trading and trading alone, you're going to glean a whole lot of information from it. But if you do one step further and actually go into, life lessons type of stuff, and again, regardless of your opinion of Tony Robbins or Anthony Robbins, because I know some people have had bad experiences with him or whatever, it doesn't change the value of the message. Just because you find out that, someone who's been preaching from the pulpit for years and years and years has been having an affair and has been talking for years and years and years about how it's not a good idea to have affairs, doesn't mean that his message is any less valid. It just means that, he's made a mistake. So that's all I'm going to say on it, but I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was fantastic, and it looks like Rhonda thought it was too. So we're going to go through the 6 steps of neuroassociative conditioning on how you can begin to change those neural associations into something more positive. Step 1 is decide what you want and what's preventing you from having it now, right now. Remember, you get what you focus on in life. If you're constantly focused on what you don't want, you tend to attract more of it. The first step in creating change is to decide what you do want and how you can have something, and then you can have something to move towards. So this is one of the hardest things that people do, is deciding what they really want. A lot of people, you ask them what they want in life, and they tell you all the things that they don't want. Well, I don't want to have all this massive debt. Well, I don't want to have my wife and kids. Oh, I don't want to have, X, Y, and Z, my stupid boss. I don't want to have my job. They talk about all these things that they don't want. But you ask them, no, what do you want? That's why one of the first questions that I ask traders is, do you want to be a professional trader? Well, I guess, yeah. But they've never really thought it through. And that's a really, really important step, is to know what you want out of life. That's why I talk so much about goal setting. For a long time I thought this was some kind of, like West Coast 1970s hippie type of stuff. Write down your goals. Let's sit around and talk about our feelings and smoke some weed. And so I didn't do any of that. I never wrote down a goal. I thought that was stupid. I thought, just work hard and it'll, good things will come. I will tell you this. I did well, in my life just working hard. The real change in my life came when I began to identify exactly what I wanted out of life. And we've talked about this in the live trading room a couple of times, about writing down your goals, knowing exactly where you want to be. And, basically what's preventing you from getting there. Because how do you know, if you don't know what you want, how do you know what's stopping you? You say, man, I want to work from home. I want to have, that freedom. And then the next question that you ask yourself is, well, what's preventing you from getting that? Well, in reality, what's preventing you is some sort of pain or consequence. You currently associate more pain with leaving your job than with staying. Now, why is that? Is it because you have a lot of security at your job as far as, job security? Do you get paid really well? Do you have some sort of medical issue that means that if you leave your job, you're going to lose your medical insurance and then you won't be able to get health care anymore? What is it that is really keeping you from taking that next step? You got a wife and kids, husband, kids, people who are relying on you, who are supporting you, a massive house mortgage, 2 car payments? What is it? But you have to identify what it is that you want in life and what's preventing you from getting it. Now, if we look at this in terms of trading, what do we want? Well, I mean, do you want to make $1 million a week? Do you want to be consistently profitable, which is what we talk about here? And then if the answer is yes, and of course the answer is yes, we want to be consistently profitable, what's preventing you from getting it? Is it your trading psychology? Is it your lack of discipline? Is it your lack of a clear-cut system or strategy? These are all things that we go through in the course. And when you've gotten to this point, you should be at a place where, you really understand what the process is. You should really understand, yes, I know why I'm not successful now. I know what I don't know, and I know what I need to know in order to be successful. And so, again, understanding that everything that I've designed in this course is anchored around trading psychology. Much of it's in the background. You don't really see a lot of it. But we start out, like I said, with the basics of pattern recognition. We run all the way through the Fibonacci stuff. We talk about trade plan development and money management. Start to show you all of the steps that are involved in becoming successful. And then when we get here and I ask you, what's preventing you from achieving the success that you want in life? Well, guess what? You can tell me. 3-4 weeks ago, a month and a half ago, that would not have been something that you could do with any degree of accuracy. You could have guessed. You could have said, well, I think. But now you know. Now you can begin to attack your trading psychology in an entirely different way. So, step 1, understand and decide what you want and what's preventing you from getting it right now. Step 2 is get leverage. Change is usually not a question of capability. It is almost always a question of motivation. Until change becomes a must in your life, you will inevitably put it off until the pain of not changing becomes greater than the change itself. In order to make the change now, we must create a sense of intense urgency. Intense urgency is very important in here. Creating intense urgency. I will tell you, we can use another analogy that I like, and it's weight loss, because almost everyone in the world has hit a point where they feel like they could lose a few pounds. If you're not one of those people and you say, "Oh, not me," well, then I don't want to talk to you, because I definitely hit that point quite frequently. And most of the time, people are looking at themselves in the mirror as they come out of the shower and saying, "Man, I don't look like I did when I was 20, but it doesn't look so bad. I'm still okay. It's not bad for 30 or 40 or whatever it is." And then as time goes by, you walk by that mirror again and again, you go, "Man, this is not going well for me. I really need to make a change. I really need to get healthy. I really need to get in the gym." But what you're really saying is not, "I need to." What you're saying is, "I want to. I'd like to. It would be nice if." Right now, you associate more pain with going to the gym, with getting on a diet, or on a health plan, by visiting that doctor, than you do from continuing in your current, down your current path. Now, at some point, there's going to be a catalyst that says, "I have to change." It is a must. No more excuses, no more waiting, no more anything. I'm doing it right now. And that catalyst is different for everyone. For some people, it's that favorite pair of blue jeans that you pull on and you can't button them. You're too stinking fat. And I've been there. I'm not a fat guy. I'm about, I'm about 190 pounds, but I have been 220. I have been, really a butterball for my body type. And when I look at pictures of myself now, back then, I just think, wow, what happened to me? Never again. But I hit that point, that stage where enough was enough. This shall not stand. I will go no further. Maybe for you, it's taking a look at your children who are growing up and saying, I want to be around to walk my daughter down the aisle. And right now, I'm working on a massive coronary. I watch the show Biggest Loser. It's a TV program here in America where basically they take extremely overweight people who are, 350, 400, 500 pounds. And over the course of 6 months, they will drop 200 to 300 pounds. And it is amazing what happens. But what they do is they put them in a controlled environment, they work them out 6 hours a day, and they constantly redirect them through the process of neural-associative conditioning and neuro-linguistic programming towards the pain pleasure modality. They say to them, they have to find out what is driving the pain, what is causing them to overeat, and become massively obese. And then they have to replace that. Not only do they have to get them fit, but they also have to replace the bad behaviors with new behaviors. It's exactly what we're doing here. The people who are successful at doing that will go home and they will continue to maintain their weight for the rest of their lives. The people who are not successful at doing that will go home, they will lose 200 pounds, they will go home, and in 5 years will have put 90% of it back on. Real and lasting change means changing what you apply pain and pleasure to. So, once you have reached that tipping point where you say enough is enough, I'm not going to be any fatter, or I'm not going to smoke another cigarette, or whatever the case may be, now there becomes an intense urgency. Maybe it's a heart attack, but something really kicks into gear for you and you get leverage. Now, if you don't have this leverage, if you haven't had a massive coronary, then you have to gain leverage over yourself. And in trading, when we think about this gaining leverage, what we have to do is we know that, for example, when we talk through what we want to do, we know that consistency and discipline is what leads to good trading. So how do we remain consistent and disciplined? Well, what we have to do is begin to associate massive pain with not being disciplined. We have to begin to, and we'll get into it in a minute, begin to visualize some of the things that we're doing, or that we've done in the past, that have caused us to lose money. And if we begin to associate all of our losses in the past with not following rules, with not being disciplined, with not having good trader discipline and trading psychology, then we can begin to link that pain with not following the rules. And this is a process that you can work with yourself on in gaining leverage. I must change because I don't want to blow out another account. Because I want to be able to quit my job. Because I want to have the extra income. I talked with a trader yesterday who wants to donate to charities, was asking me about charities and how, how I select what I give money to. He has a want and desire to start giving back. And you want to associate massive pain with everything else, with not following your rules, with not being disciplined, with everything that happened in the past. You need to associate a massive amount of pain with that. Because in doing so, what you will do is you will drive yourself towards something that is less painful. We know that human beings will move to avoid pain before they move to pleasure. Now, when given two pains, The pain of not following the rules versus the pain of having to write a trading plan and having to backtest a system and having to show up in the live trading room and having to watch all the videos and having to sit in these classes with Jason and listen to him rant on and on about trading psychology. When the pain of not following the rules becomes greater than the pain of doing the hard work, you'll do the hard work. Most of you have reached a point in your trading by the time you get here that you have gained some kind of leverage over yourself already. Step one, what do I want and what's preventing it? What you want is probably to stop losing money. I don't want to lose money anymore. The problem is that's a negative. That's what you don't want. Stop talking and thinking about things that you don't want. Start talking in terms of what you do want. I want to be consistently profitable. Mother Teresa said, when asked to attend an anti-war rally, she refused. And when asked why, she said, well, I don't want to attend an anti-war rally. She said, when you have a pro-peace rally, I will be there. Mother Teresa understood that nothing good comes from negative wants and desires. When we start thinking in terms of the positive, what I do want, that's when we can begin to assess, where we need to go. And then by gaining leverage over ourselves, by associating massive pain with the previous action, what we do is drive ourselves subconsciously sometimes towards something that is less painful. Number 3 is interrupt the limiting pattern. Interrupt the limiting pattern. Madness is doing the same thing over and over again while expecting a different result. We can be highly motivated to change, and have created leverage over ourselves, but if we continue to conduct the same inappropriate patterns in our lives, nothing will change. Changing behavior is a process of pattern interrupt, where a trader breaks the cycle of poor behavior by changing how he or she responds to their pain-pleasure mechanism. So interrupt the limiting pattern. Here's the best way that we can explain this. Imagine that you're sitting at your computer desk and you're staring at your screens, and you are in a position, and you know that you must follow your rules, and you know that in the past the reason for your failures is that you had not done the things that were necessary, and you did not have the discipline to trade your plan. But now you have that. Now you have done those things. You know what you need to do. You're sitting at your computer. You have done your analysis. You have taken a trade that was within your trading plan and design, and that trade starts to go against you. All of a sudden, the fear and the anger and the frustration start to well up. There is a tendency, there is a natural want and desire to move back to old patterns of behavior. Because at some point, that had been the saving grace for you as far as eliminating that pain or pleasure. So you begin to think about rolling your stops. Maybe I just want to back my stop up a little bit. I don't want to have a losing trade. I know I did my technical analysis right. This should be rolling over. This should be continuing. I need to move my stop. I want to move my stop. When that happens, when that moment occurs, it is vitally important, critical, that you interrupt that pattern. You are on the breaking point of whether or not you're going to continue in the new way of doing things or go right back to the old way of doing things. The way I did this for myself is when I began to feel that pattern coming back. When I began to feel myself wanting to take my profits early, roll my stop, any of those types of things. When I felt myself wanting to do that, I immediately got up. I turned around 3 times. I dropped down. I did 20 push-ups. And then I stood back up. Now, you guys may think that that's retarded, and I looked stupid down here in my office doing that. But here's the thing. I interrupted the pattern. My pattern before was to sit and stare at the screen and watch every single tick by tick by tick in the market. We get in here, and now all of a sudden, the market's moving against us, and we're watching it tick by tick by tick, and we're on a 5-minute chart now, but that's not quick enough, so we got to go down to the 1-minute chart. We got to watch the 1-minute chart go tick, 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 tick. That was the negative behavior. That was the negative pattern that I was using that was causing me to lose massive amounts of money. So I had to find a way to break that pattern Now, you may find something totally different. Imagine if every time you started to feel that way, you looked up at the sky and you said, "Hallelujah," at the top of your lungs. At least my feet don't smell today. Imagine what, the psychological effect that has on you. When psychologists work with people on neuroassociative conditioning, they use pattern interrupts that are designed to confuse people emotionally. One of the things that Anthony Robbins talks about in his book is that he would sit down with someone brand new, and before he even said a word, they would say something to the effect of, "Here's my problem," and then they would burst into tears. Just start sobbing. And he said as a pattern interrupt, what he would do was he would say, "Excuse me, we haven't started yet." And he said he was amazed that when he would do that, at how quickly that individual would gain composure, oftentimes would apologize to him, and would immediately change their emotional state. What he was doing was using a pattern interrupt to affect their pain and pleasure modality. And so it's very, very important that as you gain leverage over yourself, you know what you want, you know it's time to change, you are changing right now. Now, each and every time that you come into the same old pattern, and for traders, it's all about discipline, it's all about emotion, you need to change or interrupt that limiting pattern. And the way we do this, the way I do it, is to simply get up and walk away. If you've got a position on, we already know we don't put a position on without stops or targets. So you already have stops and targets in place. If you are that emotionally distraught in the current position that you are actually thinking about breaking your rules, then the appropriate thing to do is to get up and walk away. And wait until you can come back to the market when you're clear of mind and able to make rational decisions again. Step 4, creating new alternatives. This step is absolutely critical to establishing long-term change. The failure by most people to find alternative ways of getting out of pain and into pleasure is the major reason most people's attempt to change is temporary. Traders, after 90 days, you're going to leave me here, most of you. And you're going to be out on your own doing this. If you want to maintain consistent change for the long term and not temporary change, then you've got to do some things and create some new alternatives that are going to help you be successful. Like I said, my way of doing things is not going to be the same as yours. The way I deal with stress now is completely different than the way I dealt with it before. The way I dealt with losing trades, completely different than the way I dealt with it before. Now I get up and walk away. Now I go exercise. Now I go spend time with my wife and children, who are right upstairs right now watching my concrete patio be destroyed. I find something that I love to do, and I do that, rather than sit and be stressed out about what's happening in the market. You may be a knitter or someone who crochets. You need to find some other alternative other than what you would currently do or what you've done before, which normally is just sit in front of the computer screen and stare at the chart and hope and pray that things go your way. Move your stops, take your profits off early, freak out basically. And so by simply just installing a new alternative to what you were previously doing, you can radically change not just your trading and your profitability, but just your emotional state. We've talked about it in neural-associative conditioning. Even if you're able to make money as an emotional basket case in the market, and many people do, many people are just an emotional wreck, and they still manage to make money. But think about the quality of life. Think about, how much joy you're going to gain from this new occupation of yours, this new business that you're starting, if every day is just an emotional roller coaster for you. Think about the health issues that go along with being that frustrated and that angry about your trading every single day. Install a new habit or condition. When smokers want to quit smoking, normally after a meal they want to have a smoke, they've got to have a new habit. Maybe it's every night after they get done with the meal, they instantly step up and go for a walk. But whatever it is, you've got to have a new habit. Otherwise, it will just be temporary. As soon as pain or stress or frustration come back into your life, you're going to revert back to the old habits. As soon as for trading, if we equating everything back to trading, if we don't install a new condition or a new habit, what will begin to happen is when the drawdown comes, the extended drawdown that we know is coming, when it comes, it's going to cause us to revert back to the old way of doing things. What will happen is you will leave here after 90 days. You will go back to your trading. You will trade very disciplined for a period of time. And then slowly but surely you will begin to drift back into the old habits and the old behaviors that led you here in the first place. Running through these 6 steps is absolutely critical to establishing long-term change. So step 5 is condition the new habit. Whatever you were doing in your trading prior to being disciplined, you need to change that. And like I said, I have several different ways of dealing with that. There's several different ways that I use to deal with those stresses now, all of which are very effective for me. Step 6 is test it. Once you've completed the install of the new habit, you must test to make sure it's effective. And this is the best way you can do it, is imagine a situation that would have prompted the old behavior. Do you still feel like returning to your old pattern? Or does the new pattern take over? So, let's use an example. I am going to sit at my desk, I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to imagine how I've just come off a winning set of winning trades. I have raised my money management. I've gone from 1 standard lot to 2 standard lots. And I'm now in a position, it's my first trade with double the position on. I put the trade on, and I watch the trade tick by tick as it slowly goes against me. And I'm counting $20, $40, $60, $80 I'm down, $120, $150, $250, $500 as the market moves towards my stop. Do I want to go back to my old habit? Do I want to move my stop? Do I want to take my losses early? What is it that I want to do? Or do I want to continue to stick to my rules? Do I want to continue to follow my plan? When you have done that exercise, if you find that yes, you still want to revert back to your old pattern or behavior, well then you need to run through these 6 steps again. You need to try again, or you need to work a little more on conditioning the new habit, on interrupting the limiting pattern. But whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're doing the right things. And when I talk earlier about shifting what brings us pain and pleasure, of shifting, winning brings me pleasure and losing brings me pain, to following my rules brings me pleasure and not following my rules brings me pain, you can see the process that I go through in order to generate that in myself. Is it really possible to have a losing trade and to be okay with that because you followed your rules? Yes, it is. Absolutely. It can be done. Is it possible to have a winning trade after you've broken your rules and to actually feel bad about it? That is absolutely possible as well. I can tell you, even I, on occasion, do break my rules. It's very rare. But I go through extended drawdown periods just like everybody else does. And when that happens, there is a natural inclination or temptation to alter my plan because my plan hasn't been working. And when something like that happens and I actually have a winning trade, I'm still amazed at the amount of pain that I derive from that. That even though that was a winning trade, that there was still a massive amount of pain associated with it. But what we've got to do as traders is begin to shift what brings us pain and what brings us pleasure, to shift our neural associative condition, our neural associations, so that we begin to drive ourselves towards actions that are going to make us profitable and away from actions that are going to hurt us. Does that make sense to everyone? These 6 steps that we've gone through today. Do I have any questions? It looks like we've got some folks that are typing. Give me just a minute. Okay. Well, everybody's saying it makes perfect sense. Rhonda's made a good point. She says, pain is also like guilt. And I guess, yeah, that's absolutely right. You feel guilty for breaking your rules. I feel guilty when I break my rules because I teach people to follow their rules. And so when I don't follow my rules, I actually I kind of feel a little hypocritical. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. But, it should denote a degree of pain, or you should denote a degree of pain when when you break your rules and you win. Because, basically what you've done is you've installed an association with breaking your rules that's positive. Aaron says, I've been getting up and walking away a lot lately also. I have not broken my rules yet once. I have not broken my rules yet once the trade is entered. That is fantastic. That's exactly what we're looking for. Andre says, isn't the best psychology a result of actual understanding market behavior? Are you asking me, Andre, or are you telling me? Because you believe this. Okay, that's what I thought. Because anytime you start a question with, isn't it true that, or isn't the best psychology, that denotes basically a belief system. And so that's okay. I just want you to identify that, hey, you're asking me to validate your belief system. And I may or may not do that. But let's answer your question. Again, for everyone, the question is, isn't the best psychology a result of actual understanding market behavior? Well, there are going to be things in the market that you just don't understand, that no matter how much effort or energy you apply to it, don't make sense. For example, why, if the market raises, if a particular country raises its interest rate, would the currency fall in value? Wouldn't raising an interest rate denote that it should rise? That's a misunderstanding of market behavior. We don't understand why the market does what it does, and it's not important that we understand why the market is doing what it's doing. What's important is that we develop a strategy and a set of rules and conditions that allow us to make educated, quick decisions in the market that will help us to be successful. Something that gives us a competitive advantage over our opponent. And as we've discussed in Trading is Mental Warfare, that to a large degree, that advantage comes from how quickly we can react to changing market conditions. Market behavior is very, very subjective. And so, through our study of technical analysis, by being able to identify patterns, double tops, double bottoms, trend continuation, new structure high, new structure low, it gives you insight into what the market is thinking. You can now more quickly and more accurately predict future market behavior based on what you've seen. But ultimately, if your own personal psychology was only a matter of understanding what the market was doing, then we'd have a lot more successful traders. Because it's not hard to look at the market and say, look, the market has been supported here along 111.90s for a long time. We've now broken into new structure highs and are pulling back. The expectation is that we'll go higher. We can take a look at, by bringing over the Euro Yen. Hang on here. Well, whatever. Basically what I'm saying is you can quickly identify what the market's doing, what the market's behavior is right now. We're in trend. The market is trending. We can even look at the fib failure trade that everyone here is familiar with. Fibonacci extension or retracement. Swing low to swing high. Of the last leg of the move, 382 retracement. Fibonacci extension. Swing low to swing high. And back again. Right into that 127 extension. And we're there. So everyone can look at the market and tell what's happening right now, what the market's current behavior is. But without a firm grasp of what you need to do, what your plan of attack is, and how you deal with the position once it's on, you're not going to be successful. Does that make sense, Andre? Does that make sense to everybody? Or did I just ramble for 5 minutes? Okay, cool. Other questions? It's good question, Andre. Perfect. Well, we got a full group in here today. Anybody else have any other questions on this? Andre says, I guess what you're saying is the best psychology is to have a plan. Absolutely. Well, understand that the fact that you have a plan gives you a foundation. It gives you, an anchor point. By not having that anchor, by just twisting in the wind, once money's at risk, your perception of what market behavior is changes. We talked about viewing, the market through a prism when real money is at risk, and how that affects your decision-making process. If the market's moving against you, it looks like it's going all the way the other direction. If the market's moving with you, you feel like it's never going to stop going. Or you're worried that it's going to turn at any minute. So, the problem with not having a plan is that when you put your money at risk, now you're really not viewing the market in a rational way anymore. You're viewing it with through the prism, I guess, of live money, and it skews your perception. So by having a plan, you anchor yourself to a set of rules and conditions that helps you make rational decisions once your money's at risk. Other questions? It's been a solid hour-long day today, so that's good. Good training session. How's everybody? Psychology helps you stick to the plan when things go weird. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, Vittorio. Anything else? If not, I'm just going to go ahead and sign off. And we'll go ahead and get to trading next week. I got a couple more people typing. I'm just going to let them finish typing, and then we'll go ahead and close out. Aaron must be typing me a book. Yeah, Tony Robbins has got, some really great stuff. I mean, I went through his book years and years ago, Awaken the Giant Within, and, I actually went through it like a workbook, wrote down the goals and did the whole shebang, and I got a lot of value out of that. It was the best. I don't know what the book, I've got the book sitting here on my desk. I was reviewing it for today's lesson. It was $16. It was one of the best $16 investments that I have ever made. Anyway, questions, comments, concerns about today's lesson, send me an email. More than happy to talk with you about it. And we'll be right back here tomorrow for more live trading. So until next time, guys, good luck and good trading. We'll see you tomorrow.